Hello and welcome to the Flix Forum podcast, where each episode we go back and we look at a Netflix original film in the order of release. This episode, we have Netflix 147th film. It's the 2019 teen rom-com, The Perfect Date. It's directed by Chris Nelson. It stars Noah Centineo, Laura Marano, Odiseas Goergiadis, Camila Mendes, and Matt Walsh. I'm Jesse, and I'm here with MJ. How are you?
I'm good, mate. How are you?
Good. I went online and I got a syllabalized way of saying Noah's name to make sure I said it right.
So is that how it's said? Noah Centineo.
So the on the internet, it's got like SEN, so sen, and then TIN, so tin, Centin, and then AY, A, and then OH, Centineo.
Centineo. I always call him Noah Centineo.
Yeah, but I don't want to upset any fans. So if we do say it wrong, we're sorry.
Well, I'm going to say his name again in this podcast. So I do want to, like, if we've gone to the effort to get it right, Centineo. All right, Centineo.
I might just refer to him as Noah. That might be easier.
Big Noah. All right.
Good. So we start the show off with our Fast Flicks, where we give a quick little summary of the film that we're talking about. So what have you got for The Perfect Date?
This is feeling like a really IMDb synopsis Fast Flicks for me, but a high school senior with big plans for college recognizes that he can make money by renting himself out on dates with girls.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. I'm very same. I've done the same. I've gone for Brooks to get into one of the best colleges. He needs cash, so he sets up a dating app, selling himself and the relationships that he holds. Yeah.
If you read that, right? If you read that and someone said, hey, obviously we're doing this for the podcast and we're doing all of Netflix original films. If someone said, Jesse, I've got to watch this movie, you're like, oh, I've never heard of it. What's it about? And someone said that to you, would you be like, nah?
I'd probably be nah when I heard Noah.
I don't know, but I look at that as a concept and I'm just like, really? Like, how is this film? But, I guess you get a, teen heartthrob and you can do anything.
Exactly. So we like to talk about how a film's been put together or what we can learn about it. What sort of background have you got for this one for us?
Yeah, so it's based on a novel. The novel is called The Stand-In, written by Steve Bloom. And it was published in October 2017. So a semi-recent release. It seems like the movie world got on very quickly to make this one into a film. So that book comes out in October. And then, what's that, like 6 months later in March 2018, it was basically announced that this film was happening. They got Noah Centineo on board. They got the rest of the cast on board. The movie at that point was called The Stand-In, off the back of its source novel. Chris Nelson was directing, and it was being produced by Awesomeness Films and Ace Entertainment. So very quickly, this was just going great guns. And then later that month, principal photography began in New Orleans. New Orleans. So very quick. Yep. So that was, we're in March 2018 there, and it's January 2019. So a little bit of time's passed. It's reported that Netflix had acquired the worldwide distribution rights to the film. They'd retitled it The Perfect Date. I found it interesting that To All the Boys Before released in August of 2018, so a few months earlier, and it was also produced by Awesomeness Films. So Netflix has seen the success of To All the Boys. Obviously, Noah Centineo has had a little bit of a star off the back of that. He's kind of exploded onto the scene, and they've already negotiated with Awesomeness Films in the past for a similar film. So I can understand how this all sort of came to be as a Netflix film. And then a few months later, it was released on Netflix worldwide on the 12th of April 2019. And Netflix reported that the film was viewed by 48 million households in its first 4 weeks of release. Now, it's obviously we know those numbers are something that Netflix chooses to divulge whenever they want to divulge them. We don't get normal data from them. But do we know how many worldwide subscribers Netflix actually has?
It's a really good question, isn't it? You think there'd be more than that just in America?
Yeah. But I feel like it's 200, maybe 300 million, which means this is like a quarter of them.
Yeah, it's a pretty good landing point, I guess. And like you mentioned, it's probably the only reason that they're reporting it is because they want to show off, hey, this was big for us.
Mm.
Yeah.
I've got that it had a budget of $5.7 million. A very small budget. So they're obviously I looked everywhere. I couldn't find how much Netflix acquired the rights for, which obviously don't have to be divulged either. But 5.7 million, very specific. It's the exact same budget as the Inbetweeners back in 2012. And so a lot of sort of comedy titles around this. Bend It Like Beckham was 5.6 million. Obviously, a little bit of time's passed since that one. Portrait of a Lady on Fire, I found interesting at 5.4 million. One of a favorite of mine in the last couple of years, and a very highly acclaimed movie. And then you look at it 5 million. So I'm trying to branch it down a little bit, and that's when you got some really good $5 million films. A lot of them are horrors, but My Big Fat Greek Wedding, Get Out, Saw 2, Paranormal Activity 3, Insidious Chapter 2, Lights Out, The Visit, Ouija, all that sort of. And I was looking at this thinking, now I know why studios love making these cheap horror films, because the amount of profit that you can make off them is insane. There's an audience for them, right? Anyway, I'm digressing.
No, that was good, because all I had was Inbetweeners and Bend It Like Beckham, so you gave a bit more context there. That was that's good. I looked up what it was called around the world just for some laughs, I guess, and they like using the word perfect in the title. So, in Finnish, it's called, and I think you'll like this one, it's called The Perfect Cavalier, which I thought was quite funny. In Greek, it's called The Perfect Companion. In Hungary, it's The Perfect Guy. In Poland, I like this one. It's called Hire a Boyfriend, which is a good title for this
film. Almost the best one.
In Romania, it's called The Perfect Meeting. And the last one I've got is from Taiwan, where it's called Limited Time Perfect Man.
All right, Taiwan wins.
Yeah, Taiwan. Yeah, save the best. I
find it interesting, though. I find it interesting that a few of them are talking about like the perfect man or the perfect cavalier, talking about that character in particular. I don't feel like that's what the title's going for. I don't think they're trying to say that this bloke is the best.
No, I don't think so at all. And I think that there's a lot in this film that says he's not. So very interesting. It was nominated and won a couple of awards. So in particular at the People's Choice Awards, it won Favorite Comedy Movie Star for Noah Centineo, as well as the Choice Comedy Movie Actor for Noah, and the Choice Comedy Actress for Laura Marano at the Teen Choice Awards. And then it was also nominated for 2 other awards at the Teen Choice Awards, for the comedy movie and the Choice Ship for Laura and Noah in the film. So, a lot of, I guess, more public generated awards rather than from the critical side of things.
Yeah.
That can lead
the Teen Choice Awards is right into their realm, isn't it? But we are going to talk about consensus, aren't we?
I had a segue set up. It's all good. Go for
it. So sorry.
What do the critics say about this, MJ?
Letterboxd, sorry. I do like to talk about IMDb first. It's 5.8 out of 10 on IMDb. 35,000 ratings. 5.8 is not a bad score for a movie like this. Letterboxd is a 2 out of 5, so significantly down, which extrapolates out to a 4 out of 10 if you want to compare it to IMDb. 2 out of 5, but this is what staggered me. Nearly 40,000 ratings on Letterboxd, more than IMDb. This is not the sort of movie that I was expecting to have more ratings on Letterboxd than on IMDb. So as much as people didn't like it on Letterboxd, they still watched it.
Yeah, I reckon that there's probably these fan forums or groups, the Noah fan clubs, where they probably all band together and go, what are all the places we can jump on and log something? And then Letterboxd people have probably seen it and then gone, we'll do it lower to bring it down.
So back to reality, please.
Only thing I can think of. Rotten Tomatoes, it's actually fresh on 18 critic reviews at 67%. The audience, same as Letterboxd, had it quite a bit lower, down at 37%, and that's on over 500 on Rotten Tomatoes, which is on the higher end for some audience members getting onto Rotten Tomatoes, I guess. So
Netflix got eyeballs, so we know that for sure.
Yeah, they'd be very happy with the amount of people that have gone out of their way to say that they've seen it too. But let's head into our early thoughts. What are your thoughts for this one?
I alluded to this earlier when I asked you that question straight off the bat. I thought that it was a pretty terrible concept. And I feel like it obviously had a very predictable conclusion. Yet there was still a certain charm. And there's a definite connection between the two leads. And that made it a pretty fine watch. I was rarely offended by some of the those pathetic rom-com traits that we might have seen in similar films. and the sub 90-minute runtime certainly helped make it a lot more bearable. It actually wasn't that bad to watch.
Yeah, I mentioned this at the end of the episode last week. I had seen this one and I didn't have fond memories at all. And I put off watching this as long as I could. Because and I'm not sure if that's because my expectations were so low, but I actually enjoyed this the second time around. And I don't know whether it was because I was like, oh, I'm going to hate this, but I think, yeah, as you've mentioned, it's like a really sweet but obvious film. Yeah, so it's not offensive at all, but we'll probably talk about that as we get into some scenes and things like that. But characters, what is talk about some characters for this one?
Yeah, well, Brooks Radigan. How's that for a name? I had the subtitles on, so it confirmed straight away that I hadn't misheard. His name is Brooks Radigan. I don't know if I love it or I hate it, but it's sticking with me.
Brooks there was a lot of stuff on. There was a lot of stuff online about his full name, saying like Brooks Radigan, attorney, lawyer, representing the defense case. Like it's just like this real mouthful word that you expect that from. Yes. Anyway, keep going. Sorry.
I think I like it. I do think I like it, but I don't know if I get it. Anyway, I think the Noah Centineo charm is actually rubbing off on me. I like him, and therefore I kind of automatically liked Brooks. He's like a more ambitious version of Noah Centineo's character in To All the Boys. He still kind of carries that charisma and confidence with a little bit of a, I'm a little bit too up myself kind of thing. And I think that's his whole brand. And it actually kind of annoyed me when he sort of ventured into being a bit of a shit friend because he's a pretty switched on dude. He just obviously got caught up in himself and his own objectives to notice everyone else around him. And it's kind of that character trait that made the story what it is. But, all in all, he's very well cast, and that kind of works.
I've literally, like, exactly what you've said. I've just said in different words. I still use that word, like, he's ambitious and smart, and with this mind or this his mind so set on this goal of getting into Yale, it overemphasizes these selfish traits, I guess, because he's so blinded by this goal. And as you mentioned, going for this application to get to Yale means, he's horrible to his dad, his best mate, all the girls he interacts with. So yeah, as you mentioned, it's hard to I didn't really appreciate the scenes where he did sort of turn into that bit of a dick.
Yeah.
All right, I'm guessing you got Celia next.
Yeah, so Celia actually, she grew on me, and I think she's supposed to. She started off just a little bit too dour, almost the notion of like, I don't want to be in a rom-com kind of vibe. And when you're settling down to watch a rom-com, that's kind of a jarring feeling. But then she obviously warms, and she warms to Brooke, and then you warm to her as an audience member. And I just think I also really appreciated where her head was at with a lot of things. When they really humanize her, and you sort of understand the hurt that she feels, and you start to connect with her a lot more. And I think at her essence, she's quite a good role model-esque character to some extent for some young girls, with her take on, wanting to be herself. And eventually she kind of finds a nice groove where she does do that.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. This character, I sort of, if we go back and think about, we saw that, was it Sierra Burgess is a Loser, whatever that movie was?
Yeah.
Sort of a similar sort of thing, whereas I really dislike that character. But as you mentioned, this one, she starts off really stubborn and different compared to everyone else that you see in the film. But I do feel like that she was pretty true to herself throughout. And, that idea that they talk about of her being too scared to show who she is to others and things like that I sort of connected with that and thought, that made me connect with her more as a character too throughout.
That's a great comparison you made with Sierra Burgess' Loser, because the big issue with that film was that she was actually a pretty bad character. Like, she did some really ordinary things that were almost unforgivable. And when you're trying to root for this underdog, it became really difficult to do that for her. And she wasn't a role model, whereas Celia's got a lot of good traits in that sense.
Exactly. All right, who have you got next?
I've got Murph. So his best mate. I got the feeling he was going to be a bit more of a main character from the opening of the film, and I think I was left a little bit unfulfilled with Murph. I found him interesting, but never did we really hear or see any specifics of his own motivations or his own objectives. He's kind of just there to serve Brooks, and And I can see why that works from a story perspective, but I feel like this character showed enough that I wanted him to be fleshed out a little bit more and learn more about him, because they created this really interesting character on the surface and then never really decided to go into it.
Yeah, I'm on the same page again, because the setup of him, and I really enjoyed the idea that he's got this best mate that, you know, he not only hangs out with him, does these zombie things, he goes to where he works with him at the same place, you know, he supports him in setting up this app. You know, seems like he's really committed to this friendship, and then he's literally left in the cold by books pretty quickly. And I think the thing that frustrated me the most with this is that if he was a more fleshed out character like you're talking about, that we could have got on board a bit more with, then it wouldn't have felt so tokenistic for me. Because to me, it's like we've got this gay character who's also dyslexic, but we don't even get to know the name of the guy that he's crushing on. That, you know, you get to the end and it's like the final scene. I still don't know his name. Like, yeah, I just felt like really underdone character that we probably could have got more from and probably could have enjoyed more.
Not to mention, like, as much as Brooks had the idea for the app, and he's like, oh, yeah, I made this app. It's like, hang on, you just like pitched an idea at someone who went out and made it. Like, you should be taking like 10% of the credit, not all of it.
Exactly. And even Celia sort of had the idea a little bit too. So they all should get a piece
true.
of it.
It's true.
Anyone else?
I just wanted to quickly talk about Charlie Radigan, who is Brooks's dad. I like Matt Walsh as an actor. I do. I think he's quite good in the roles he's in. But in what world is Matt Walsh Noah Centineo's dad? Like, in your casting, I just, even looking at them together, it just felt like Noah Centineo is like this big, brooding, young, handsome man. And Matt Walsh is not small, but like, he's not a tall man. He's certainly not an athletic looking man. There's no way he would have produced Brooks Radigan. So I just want to mention that. Obviously, he's not a huge part of the story, really. Whilst I enjoy the father-son bonding by the end of it, I don't think I ever really felt these issues that they had between them, apart from the fact they were on the surface and talked about that they had these issues. And even when he was at rock bottom, you know, what did he do to earn his minor redemption that he got? Was it just that he cleared a plate from the couch at one point and he was putting his hand up to cook some meals? Was that the growth that we were supposed to see out of him? I don't know. I know that he wasn't a huge character, but I'm just trying to pick him apart a little bit.
Yeah, he almost seemed like in a sitcom, like the next door neighbor that you pop into and have a chat with, that, like, just for a little bit of advice. It was, you didn't get that connection that actually, you know, father and son. I just chucked in Shelby there just briefly too, because I know that they set her up as the good looking, rich, cool, popular sort of person that's focused on material stuff. But I also did like that they didn't, like, with the reveal towards the end, and spoiler alert, I guess we haven't done one yet. We're going to ruin this film.
Yeah, we have.
She did identify that being true to yourself and not lying and honesty is an important thing to her, even though she may be focused on all those things that society often says is you know, not necessarily the best thing. I still like that she did have some good traits to her as well.
And she was ambitious too.
Yeah, very true. Good. All right. The director, Chris Nelson. Anything interesting you'd find about him?
Like, apart from the fact that this was his third feature, Date and Switch in 2014 and Arse Backwards in 2013, done a couple of shorts, couple of TV shows and miniseries, but no, this is all. I haven't seen those films, so I'm not too familiar with his work.
Yeah, me either. I thought it was interesting that this was his last sort of work or piece of work that you could see he's done. So I'm not sure what's going on, like 2019 to now. You think probably be working on something, but yeah, interesting.
COVID happened, Jesse.
Very true. All right, let's talk about some scenes. What are some ones that you enjoyed in this one?
So this is not a scene; it's an all-encompassing vibe I got, and I have to mention what I did like is the connection between Brooks and Celia. They kind of had these verbal tennis matches that flowed really nicely. They were sharp, they were witty, they were really natural. One of the better romantic comedies. I don't want to necessarily lump it into a romantic comedy category because I feel like it was so much more, but Set It Up on Netflix that we watched a while ago. One of the things I loved about that was this connection that the two leads had. And I don't think we've seen a good enough connection since then until this. I think these two had a really good connection. And it's not a scene, but it happens constantly throughout the film. And it was a highlight for me.
Yep, agree.
And the only scene specifically that I do have there is how Celia told her parents near the end that she just wants to be whatever she wants to be. And the idea that why does high school have to be the time in your life where you have to be perfect at everything? And I know this is not necessarily something that parents will put onto their kids, but it's something that kids will feel throughout high school. They feel like it's the most important thing in the world, because at the time in their lives it is, and it has been the most important thing in the world. And they do feel the constant pressure to be perfect at everything. And I really appreciated that. I thought it was a great scene. I thought it was great to see the strength and bravery of her to do that with her parents. And I think it certainly stood out to me from a character perspective as well as a scene perspective. But I thought it was great.
I liked the group hug too. That was nice.
Yeah, that was as much as it was corny and like it's sort of like, yeah, we're still a comedy. We're still having a bit of fun with this. Like, and it was kind of true to the dad as well. I think that sort of fit his character. So yeah, that was good.
All right. Yeah, my scenes are more towards the end of the film. So we did mention before spoilers, but there's a scene where, and we mentioned the father-son relationship. There was one scene that I did like where towards the end, Brooks sits down with his dad and actually talks about why he's been out late at night. He's been, on this app trying to get money for college. And I just liked a bit of the dialogue from the dad talking about, reflecting on who you were in the past, who you want to be in the future, and sort of split that difference of where you are now. And just that moment where, they said they love each other. I just felt a bit of warmth from that. It was a nice little part towards the end for me. And the only other thing too that towards the end as well is this whole idea. This whole film has been about him focusing on what's he going to put in this application letter. And I'm not necessarily a huge fan of rom-coms, but I did like the application letter that he wrote to Celia to see if she'd accept him. I thought that was really cute. And that was a nice way to end it.
It was actually very nice. Yeah, good pick up.
Good. All right. What are some things that you necessarily didn't like?
Yeah, look, in general, again, I mentioned this before. I just didn't like it when he was a bad friend because, they've set up this guy who is pretty switched on. And as you said, like the reasons that he wasn't a good friend was because he's tied up in his own goals. And those are really, noble and ambitious goals. So you can't get too mad at that. But it just annoyed me when it was so obvious what he was doing. And it kind of felt like we were taking away from a character that they'd set up really nicely. But in terms of, there's a couple of scenes specifically I didn't like. One of them was obviously when they had that big breakup scene, and that was fine within itself. But within 2 minutes, he was kissing Shelby, and then he asked her to the formal. Like, it's one of the few times that this actually felt like a trashy, cheap rom-com. #reality high.
I don't have many. I've only got 2 scenes, and this is one of the scenes as well. Like the breakup was fine, but that 2 minutes later, the make out of nowhere. Yeah, I agree. It was horrible. Absolutely horrible.
It was what you would expect from a lesser film, I'll be honest. And they just sort of dipped their toe into it where they shouldn't have. So the only other scene, it was bad. The only other scene that I did have was, and this is being a bit hypercritical, but the scene with the old lady when he goes on a walk with the old lady. It was when it was happening, I was like, oh, this is kind of nice. And then I just realized, oh, hang on, they're just using this scene for her to explain her situation and how it's exactly the same as his situation, and he needs to learn a lesson from that. I was like, don't throw that in my face. Can you? Yeah, if you're going to, I don't mind you showing him on different dates and we get to experience different people and see different sides of him. But this was just too, didn't like it.
It would have been better if you'd done like a date early on with someone who was really old. So it wasn't just one jammed at the end.
Exactly. Who's gonna give him some wisdom? Oh, we'll just give him an old lady. And she's like, I don't know how to use an app, but here I am walking. Like, too much of it.
Good. Yeah. So yeah, I've only got one other one apart from the makeout scene where they do rock up at that formal at the end, and Brooks sort of bumps into some of his clients, and they sort of mention that side hustle that he's been doing in front of Shelby. And I just didn't like the way that the reveal, or how he was forced to reveal what he'd been doing. I would have rather seen him do it out of his own free will to explain the situation rather than it just being like pushed on him. Just for him as a character, that would have been a bit nicer, I think.
It kind of threw me as well, because firstly I was like, I like seeing this girl with a date. This is nice. And then when she sort of mentioned it, I was like, is this like such a big deal? Like, why is she so annoyed? Like, he didn't double cross her or do anything, directly to her. It was just, this is what he was doing in her life before he was with her. It didn't quite make sense to me. I didn't know. I wasn't expecting a big reveal with it.
Yeah, exactly. Good. All right. What was this film trying to say? What are some ideas or themes?
I think there's a nice idea about the balances you need to have in life, and that idea of not forgetting to smell the roses. Like setting a goal is great, but not if it gets in the way of the people in your life that make it great. And being singularly focused on something isn't normally a good thing. I think it's nice to look at the things in your life and work really hard to get the things that you want, but your life is never going to be about one thing. And don't just assume that because you are so committed to something that your needs are ever more important than those around you. But more importantly, don't forget what it's like to be yourself. And this was probably a little bit explicit when he literally took on different personas and everything. And when he was himself, he was happy with Murph and he was happy with Celia, and never lose sight of what makes it easy to be you and who makes it easy to be you. So there's some nice stuff here.
Yes, I completely agree. That whole idea of being true to yourself, being honest, not trying to be what you think others want you to be, which you've already touched on as well. And it's hard to say any further than what you said, but that idea too of becoming an adult, figuring out life, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, exactly. And also, I didn't mind when he had that meeting with the dean and he started talking about the bees and stuff. I thought that was great. Savvy, clever. I don't know why she got annoyed, but that's what you do. You need to do those sorts of things. It wasn't a bad thing.
I kind of didn't like how they put it out, that it was like they made it out as if he was just crapping on at the start. And then, I don't know, they could have done it a bit better that you knew that he'd researched it.
Yeah. But he's a smart guy. I think that's a great move to do. And I think it should be advice that kids take if they are going for an interview. Like, try and know who's interviewing you and what's going to make them happy.
Excellent. So what did you take away from this one?
It probably won't be a memorable one for me, but at least it won't be memorable for the wrong reasons either. It certainly sits above Sierra Burgess and the Kissing Booth, but probably not quite up to the To All the Boys I Loved Before standards when talking about those sort of popular Netflix original rom-coms.
Yeah, so for me, I guess that it was actually quite sweet. And I think that the adult references are quite minor. So this could realistically be a good introduction to a rom-com for some younger people too, I guess, which would be good.
Yeah, so look, I jumped on IMDb at one point after I watched the film. So I didn't actually jump on it all during the film, but afterwards I was just having a look through the cast, and the guy who played, his character's name is Larry. He was the date of the girl who, so when Brooks went on a date with a girl who had never been on a date and she was trying to learn how to date, and they bumped into her at the prom that we spoke about before. Her date was played by a guy called Ivan Hoey Jr. He looked familiar, so I wanted to look at him. Okay. He's not really in anything, but he was the stand-in double for Jonah Hill on 22 Jump Street, and I just thought that was funny.
Wow, that's a big pickup. I would not have had any idea. I would not even have picked up on that. Yeah, I didn't go on IMDb at all. So, did you have any questions that you wanted to ask about this one?
I have a couple. They are semi-related. Actually, no, they're not really. But firstly, how much longer can Noah Centineo play a high school student? He's 25 years old, if you are wondering.
Yeah, he still looks young. I reckon he'll be able to keep doing it for a couple more years. As long as the roles keep coming, I reckon girls will keep swooning over him.
He seems so physically developed now. He's a genuinely big man.
He's like that kid from the boy from the Kissing Booth. He's still doing like a few more of them, I reckon. So
he's enormous, but he's actually younger than he seems.
Yeah, very true. What else?
My second question: Yale. Now, Yale can't be that cheap because surely he's not getting more than like $50 on these dates. And he probably got like 75% of the way of paying for his college tuition. So I'm thinking maybe he's got a few hundred, maybe $1,000 from all this. I don't know. I don't know how he got so close. Unless he's gambling on the side.
The escort business is a big buck business, big money sort of business, I guess. So he's obviously raking in the cash. High school girls. I like that they made sure that they said he's not getting paid for sex.
Yeah, true.
That's illegal.
That was never. Yeah, it was never really. It wasn't. We weren't talking about Juice Bigelow here.
Exactly. Anything else that you wanted to ask?
No more questions from my end.
All I wanted to say was, do you reckon this could have been better if it was a bit raunchier?
Ooh. I think it changes. I think the audience definitely changes, but yeah, I think there's room for it. Maybe it would have been. Maybe it would have appealed to me more, but maybe it wouldn't have appealed
could
to
have
the
added a
audience.
couple more little jokes that probably could have been a little bit more dirtier.
Fair. I'll give it that.
All right, time to wrap this one up. So we give the films a rating out of 5 and give it an average out of 5. So what have you got, MJ?
Look, all in all, it's certainly not a bad watch. I never really cared too much for the characters or the outcome because the whole script basically wrote itself after the first 15 minutes. But the journey getting there wasn't offensive in any way. So great chemistry from the two leads was really a welcome surprise to me. So I'm going to give it 2.5 stars.
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised on the rewatch for this one, and it actually has quite a nice message. So for me, like you mentioned before, the chemistry of the leads is good. I've got my little infant son sitting right next to me, so I apologize for the goo gagas. But yeah, it was.
I'm looking forward to hearing his take.
It's pretty easy watching for most people, I think. So I'm bumping my rating up. That I originally gave it a 2, so I'm giving it a 2.5 as well.
Welcome to the club.
Excellent. So that gives us a 2.5. Pretty easy, straightforward. We have Twitter, we have Facebook, we have Instagram, and we'd like you to follow us if you can. Give us a like, give us a retweet, whatever you can. Question that I wanted to ask this week was, what's a stressful application that you've had to write yourself at some stage?
Stressful application. I was thinking like a mobile application.
Well, it could be either because they're both in this movie.
Oh man, any cover letter you got to write when you got to get a job is always a pain in the ass because you're trying too hard to tell them exactly what they want to hear.
Always hard. All right, well, we'll be back again next week for another Netflix original film, which is very, very, very exciting. It's a 2019 Spanish drama, so we're gonna have the subtitles on next week, which is gonna be good. And it's called "Who Would You Take to a Deserted Island," which is an interesting title, I guess. And I guess that I'm intrigued, very, very intrigued. It's directed by Yata Linares. It stars Paul Monin, Jamie Lorente, Andrea Ross, and Maria Pedrosa. So that's what we've got next week for you.
Well, I've been looking at that title for a while, and you're right, it's intrigued me as well. So we'll see where we go with it.
Excellent. As usual, thank you for the catch up in the chat. It's always good to do one of these teen rom-coms and see what we think about it.
No, it's been great, mate. Thank you. And it's been a nice sort of welcome addition late in the piece with the young man on your lap.
We've got there in the end. Hopefully it hasn't caused too many disruptions. He's taken the script now, so we're all good. We're good.
I'm telling you, I'm looking forward to seeing his review on Letterboxd of The Perfect Date because I know he's watched it.
Yes, he loved it. Loves Noah Centineo. I think he's a beast. Centineo. Yeah, good. All right. Well, I'll see you next week.
See you then, mate.